In this lecture, we're going to be talking about Bollinger Bands. So what are Bollinger Bands? Bollinger Bands are going to be the first technical indicator we look at. Now, what are technical indicators? They are things that are drawn on top of chart or beneath charts that are computed using the prices and or volume on the charts that are going to highlight something for us, trying to tell us if something might go down or might go up. Okay, so if you go on TradingView and you click here on indicators, these are where you're going to find the technical indicators. You're going to see there's a bunch of them. Most of them are really bad. And anybody can create their own indicator. You can create one tomorrow and add it here, right? Now, Bollinger Bands, this one, which you can click on it and it'll look like this, is one of the most popular technical indicators out there. And, you know, for people who know me or have seen my other courses, this is the one that I use the most. This is the one that across all firms that I've worked at, that is the most used by professional traders. And there's a reason for that, because, you know, it really makes a lot of sense for certain strategies to use that indicator. Okay. Now, like with all other indicators, you could get away with not even using it because, you know, to draw any indicator, what you're actually doing is you're taking prices and volume and you're creating that indicator based on a formula that you have. Well, if you only need prices and volume, then why not just look at the prices and volume yourself? Why do you actually need to draw the indicator? The only thing that the indicator does is just highlight something that you can already deduct by yourself. But, you know, it's important because you want these things highlighted for you. That's the purpose of it. So it just makes your life easier. So what makes this indicator really good? Let's explain what it is, okay? And to do that, let's explain it through an example. Let's say this. Let's say you are in math class, okay? And you just received your grade. Your grade is 70%. Or let's say 60% actually. Let's say 60. And, well, you know what? No, let's say 70. We'll go with 70. 70 is going to be a better example. So let's say you have 70%. And then your friend who's in the same school as you, he's doing the same math class, but with a different teacher. He comes up to you and he's like, yo, I got 80%. And you know that you're smarter than your friend, you know? So you're like, how come? You know, is this guy smarter than me? What do you guys think? Do you think that because this person has a higher grade that he's smarter than you in that subject? It's math, in math? Or is he better than you in this class? Well, not necessarily, because his teacher might be an easier teacher. Your teacher might be really hard, way more strict, gives you harder, exam questions or whatever. Or his teaching style is worst and he doesn't teach well. So that's not fair. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at something else. You're going to have to look at the average, or you can call it the average of your class. So let's say, for example, the average in your class is 60%. You might say, well, that means I'm good. I have 10% over, the group. Well, what if the average in his class is maybe 50%? So, you know, you have 10% over your class, but he has 30% over his class average. Now, does that mean he's better than you? What do you guys think? Again, this is not enough information to know. You need something else. Because you don't know how dispersed the grades are in this class. You know, maybe in his class, in your friend's class, you know, you have students that have 0% and students who have 100%. So there's a very high dispersion amongst the grades. Which means that your friend isn't an outlier in this class. He's just another guy who has 80%. Maybe there's a lot of other people who have 80% and 90 and 95, and a bunch who have 0%. So he's not really an outlier. And maybe in your class, everybody's clustered around the average of 60%. People have 58%, 62, 61. Everybody's clustered there and you have 70%. So you're an outlier compared to your group. And that would mean you're better. So how would we be able to compute that? What we would need is we need to look at the dispersion of the grades, how far they are from the mean. And to do that, we can use what we call the standard deviation. I'm not going to go into the maths of that, but you can Google it. And the standard deviation is going to tell you how dispersed the grades are. Now, let's say in your class, the standard deviation is 5%. And in your friend's class, the standard deviation is 30%. Well, now we have enough information to know who's better. Okay? Why? Because now we can draw what we call the bell curve, a normal distribution, okay, which will look like this. A normal distribution, this is something that's used a lot in statistics, and it looks like a bell curve. And in the middle here, we are going to put the mean, which is u, and the mean is going to be, in our case, 60%. That's the average in the class. And what in the normal distribution we see is that you are going to have 68% of people. So here, about 68% of people that are going to be one standard deviation around the mean. So in this case, one standard deviation, which is 5%, above 60% is going to be 65%. And one standard deviation below 60%, which is going to be 55%. So in this class, we know that about 68% of students should have a grade between 55 and 65%. Now, if we want to look at two standard deviations around the mean, so two standard deviations around the mean, minus two standard deviations. Well, another standard deviation, so another 5% would be 70%, and here would be 50%. And here we're going to have, I think, about 13 point something percent. Let's say 13.5%. And here 13.5%. So in this whole section here, you're going to have about 96% of students. So if you have 70% grade, you know, and here there's going to be like another 2% and another 2% here. So if you have, you know, a 70% grade, you know that you're better than about, you know, all of these people, which is like 98% of people. That's a great grade. It means you're an outlier, really good. But in this case, this guy here is only one standard deviation above the mean. And if you have one standard deviation above the mean, well, you have 68% here and 13% and then 2%. So you're about 84% better than everybody else. So you're better than 84% of people, but this guy is better than 98% of people. So he's better. And this way of computing, if somebody's an outlier or how far this person is used, let's say, for example, here in Cégep, in like college, in Montreal, this is what they use to grade students and give them an R score. Okay, that's what they use. So they use that for in a lot of places because it's a fair model. Okay, and in statistics, it's used in everywhere. For example, if you're looking at men height, I can say the average height of a man is 1.7 meters. And then I can look at the dispersion of the volatility between men of their heights. And then I can say, well, if you're 1.8 meters, then you're taller than, you know, whatever percentage of the population. You can use it for weight. You can use it for whatever. Okay. If you go on Google here, and I'm going to put normal distribution, standard deviation. Okay. So I just wrote normal distribution, standard deviation. And you can go on images and you'll see it here, right? So you have the normal distribution and you have 68% of the population is going to be within one standard deviation of the mean. 95.4% will be within 2 standard deviations, and 99.7% will be within 3 standard deviations of the mean. Okay? Now, you might be wondering, why is this guy talking about this? How am I going to be using it to trade, cryptocurrencies? Well, because imagine this. Imagine I take a chart of prices. And I have, price of a cryptocurrency going up, going down, and, fluctuating. And then I look at it and I say, okay, well, you know what? What is the mean of these prices? And I use something like a moving average, a 20-day moving average, or a 20 period. So I look at the last 20 periods and I do their average and I say, well, the average is going to be the mean. So in this case, maybe the average price of the last 20 periods here was 100. That's the average. Right? And then I look at the volatility of these candles of the last 20 periods. And I see that the volatility is maybe $5. And I say, okay, well, look, the volatility is 5. I want to draw 2 lines. Well, first I want to draw the moving average in the middle here, which is going to be the mean. And I want to draw 2 lines. And one line is going to be 2 standard deviations below, and one line is going to be 2 standard deviations above. Right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm drawing a bell curve here around the chart. Let me just erase this here, give a bit more space. I'm drawing a bell curve here, and I'm saying, look, at 2 standard deviations above, I want to draw a line here, and at 2 standard deviations below, I want to draw another line. And this is going to tell me that there is a 96% chance of prices remaining within this range. And then if prices are, way outside of this range here, I know that this is very unlikely and prices should reconverge or come back. That's what it would tell me. Okay. So for example, if I go back on TradingView here, and you can put any chart, I can choose any coin, and you can do it on any time frame. So I can select 1 hour, and imagine I'm looking at this, and I add indicator. I go here and I click BB for Bollinger Band. It pops up. Here it is. What this would tell me, and if I double click on it, you see that they used a 20 period moving average for this middle line, which is going to give us the average, and they're using a 2 standard deviation to draw these lines, just like we've seen. And what this tells me here, if I'm looking now, tells me, well, the average of the last 20 days is this price. The last 20 periods, which I'm using 1 hour candle, so the last 20 hours is this price. And then based on the volatility of these last 20 candles, there's 95% probability that the prices will remain within this range. Okay. So basically for you as a trader, you might use this like this. You might be like, oh, well, look, prices here are way outside of this range. Let me sell. Let me not just keep holding it. And you might sell your position. And, right enough, prices did go down. And if you want to buy them, you can be like, oh, well, this is way further from the mean, the average. It's way lower. So maybe I should buy it now because it shouldn't be that low. And you might buy it. And then here, you might sell it again. And when it's low, you might buy it again and sell it and buy it and sell it and buy again and sell it and here buy again. So basically, you can use this, to tell you where prices are versus the average. Okay. Now you can use different standard deviations. If you want to be 99.7% sure that prices are going to be within this range, you can use a 3 standard deviation, which is going to be wider, right? So the bands got wider. So you're going to have less trades, but I guess better ones in a way. Not necessarily better, but more confident ones. Okay. Now, the thing with this, and you'll see that the standard deviation also changes because you see here when prices were very volatile, well, the volatility, the standard deviation got bigger, and 3 standard deviation was this big, right? This was 3 standard deviations, this big, because these candles are big, so the volatility is high, right? But now, if you look here, look at the standard deviation, how small it is. Here. Now it's only this big street standard deviations. Why? Because the candles are so small now that, street standard deviations is not that far away. So you'll see that the bands themselves, they widen as the security that you're trading, the cryptocurrency that you're trading, is more volatile, and it will narrow as it's less volatile. So for different cryptocurrencies, if one is more volatile, the bands will be wider. If one is less volatile, they'll be tighter. And if that same cryptocurrency becomes more wider, it'll widen up and narrow. Now the percentage that I gave you aren't actually going to work in cryptocurrencies or in any financial market. Why? Because in the financial markets, we don't actually have a regular distribution like this. We don't have a regular bell curve. What we do have is something that's called a fat-tailed distribution. Okay? And I'll explain this here. So a regular bell curve is going to look like this. Let's take this. A regular bell curve is going to look like this. Okay? Just like we've seen. Now, a fat-tailed distribution is going to look more like... I'm sorry for my drawing here. It's not the best drawing, actually. Oh, this is awful. It'll look like this. This is a little better. I think Google would be a better friend here. Now, what is the difference between these two? The difference is the things that are way more common to happen are going to happen even more often. And the things that are very unlikely to happen, like these very, outlier or, Six Sigma events or things that are very not common. In the financial market, they are actually way more common than you would think. So even things that you would think would never happen, like prices very soaring up a lot or crashing a lot, they do happen in the financial markets. So we have a fat-tailed curve. So you have to, know this, because things that you think are unlikely, basically you get a price here and you're like, well, in the next hour, because I'm looking at an hour chart, the likelihood that we get here, is less than 1%. Well, no, it's not, because of the fat-tailed distribution. They are likely. So this can really go down or really go up outside the bands. So you have to be careful where you use an indicator like this, okay? This indicator, you're going to want to use it when you think that something is mean reverting, right? Because you have things that are in momentum and things that are mean reverting. These are the two types of strategies you do. A momentum is when something is going in a direction and you think it's going to keep going in that same direction. You're running a momentum strategy. You don't want to use this indicator when running a momentum strategy, because this is an indicator that tells you when something is away from its mean. If you don't think that something is coming back to its mean anyways, why use an indicator for that? If something is really in momentum, there's an event, don't use this indicator. You're going to want to use this when you're looking at something that when it deviates from its mean, it has high likelihood to come down. Something that isn't in momentum, okay? There's not an upcoming event or news or hype behind it. So this is when you would want to use that. And to be honest, one of the reasons why this is a very popular indicator and I highly use it is because the market is usually in mean reversion. So 80% of the time, things are just going up and then back down and up and down and up and down, and nothing is really happening. It's only 20% of the time that something is really skyrocketing in a direction. Okay? So as a trader or an active trader, mean reverting strategies are very good because they make you a bit of money all the time, instead of just banking on these 20% times where something is really going. So you're making money off of all these little movement that the market makes. Now, that being said, we aren't going to use the Bollinger Bands in the simple way. And the strategies that I'm going to show you in this course, we are going to use Bollinger Bands in a more advanced way by combining different cryptocurrencies. You'll see, you'll love the way that we use it, and you'll really understand why an indicator like this is extremely helpful. We won't be using it just by putting it on one cryptocurrency like that and just buying and selling. It'll be a more advanced way of using it. And you're really going to like it, I think. So you're going to be excited when you look at these strategies. That being said, this is Bollinger Bands, and I'll see you guys in the next lecture.